on there, view your films. Films. Sequels suck. Sequels suck. Sequels suck.
Welcome back, movie fans. This is the podcast Sequel Suck, and we've got another special Scream-related episode for you today because I think one of the things looking forward to Scream 6, a lot of the big debate is whether Stu Macher is still alive. There's a fan base out there that really want to see him back, believe he's still alive, believe that's part of the canon, and then we've got the people that definitely think he's dead and not necessarily opposed to him coming back in some form, but definitely have issues with if he did come back, how ridiculous that may be. On the line, I've got Michelle with me again, huge Scream fan. I think I know where she's going to go with this anyway, but their special guest, we have the writer of this amazing Scream book, Jake Maroney. How are you, mate? All the way from Philadelphia.
Thanks for having me. I'm doing good. How are you guys?
Very good, very good. A few things have dropped since we even did the last podcast. I think we talked about Scream 6 being green lit, and then Gail Weathers, aka Courtney Cox, signing on for a 6th Scream movie. And now we actually have a date. I think, was it the 23rd of March? I probably should have done my research. Or was it
the 31st of March?
31st of March.
373 days.
Yeah, wow. There you go.
The countdown has started.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Definitely
isn't
has.
it? So it's all, the community's a buzz. Unfortunately, there is some toxic fandom as well happening at the moment. Some people getting very angry. But look, no, actually, let's go to Jake. Quickly talk about your book. Tell us what inspired you, apart from loving Scream, what inspired you to go down this path, track down all these amazing people that have been involved in the Scream franchise, chasing them down, emails, phone calls, interviews, and putting this book together. Because I read it, and look, honestly, I'm probably 80% of the way through, but I can see how much work was put into it. So, I mean, what was that journey like?
I have to say, this is my first book, and I couldn't have picked a better topic, because everyone that I talk to has been so generous with their time and, so supportive, like case in point, Marianne Madalena, who had a really close partnership and worked with Wes creatively. And, she was one of the first people I interviewed, and she also helped connect me with other people. And it came through how much these movies meant to everyone. It wasn't just a job for them. So I think, in some ways, I think they enjoyed talking about it. But yeah, I mean, this was, it was before all the 25th anniversary stuff really started happening. I started interviewing people in the fall of 2020. And it had been a while since some of them had talked about the movie and their roles and the experience. So I think they really enjoyed being able to reminisce, because it was such a good experience for everyone. I think that they enjoyed looking back. That there's always some jobs that people have that they, outside of acting too, where they never want to talk about it again. And I never got the feeling that anyone I talked to had any kind of experience. Everyone really enjoyed their time. Marianne said that they would go out afterwards, have group dinners, go out, hang out offset and everything. So I think that it really was a special time for all of them.
So how do people find your book? Like, I got mine through Amazon. I mean, where's the best place for people to buy your book, especially when you talk about international fans of the series?
So it is available on Amazon. If they're looking for an ebook, they can also purchase it directly from my publisher's website, Bear Manor Media. They have ebooks. The ebook is on Amazon too. I know in America that it's pretty much anywhere, Barnes and Noble, Target. You can order it online. I'm not sure internationally which websites, but I know at least from my publisher and from Amazon, it's available.
Cool. Good. Look, I can highly recommend it. There's definitely a few Scream books I have in my collection, but it's definitely one worth reading because there was definitely some stories and stuff I read in there that I thought I knew or were sort of urban legends or not really confirmed, but thankfully you are able to sort of uncover the dirt, I guess, and find some really cool tidbits and just stories that probably had never come out before. So yeah, it's definitely, I can't recommend it more highly enough. I guess the question I want to ask, was there anyone that you were surprised you got that did an interview, or was there a favorite or someone that you just didn't expect much from that gave you so much?
Well, like I said, Marianne has been so supportive. She connected me to Patrick Lucier. I wasn't able to get a hold of him. And she's been supportive if I had follow-up questions, and before I started the project, the one thing with the Scream movies are a lot of their casts have gone on to huge careers. So I wasn't really sure, you had people like Liev Schreiber, who wasn't really known when he first started, and now he's Ray Donovan and a serious actor. And so I was like, I don't think that he's gonna want it, especially, it's a small publishing company. I've never written a book before. I don't have pedigree necessarily. And he was, I think, the second person that signed up, and he was great to talk to. I mean, so I think that was fun. And like you said, there are a lot of stories. I don't know if you've gotten through the Scream 4 section, but there's a really fun story with Nico Tortorella where they were late coming to dinner with the cast and the filmmakers, and Bob Weinstein was in town, and there was just kind of, I guess Bob was upset that they were late, and so Bob made a comment, and Nico, like something like, "It was nice of you to show up," and Nico responded, "Well, it was nice that we finally got the script. Where's that bit?"
Yeah.
So, or like Lynn McCree talking about the kissing scene with
oh yeah.
So yeah, and how they all like rushed to help her because he was being a little more forward than Mr. Morgan and Mr. Loomis should have been.
Yeah, very forward. He really got into character.
Exactly. He knew they were there to have the affair, so
really thought she was Sharon Stone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I will give a shout out to Ryan C. Showers. So I guess I'd heard about your book coming out, and in fairness, like you said, you hadn't written a book before, but sometimes when you see something, that's attached to a franchise or a movie or something, you really want to find out more about it, more about the author. You're not too sure, and especially, at least from my point of view, it was going to cost me 40 something Australian dollars to get, and it was like, well, I'm happy to pay that and support yourself, but again, you sort of like, is it going to be just like a coffee table book, or is it going to be any new information? And it wasn't until I heard you on Scream with Ryan C. Showers that sort of confirmed, oh, well, that's the book I was looking at, and now I'm definitely happy to sort of purchase. So I'll give a shout out to Ryan, because I think that I'm sure, I hope that helped people find you and find this book.
Yeah, I had started talking with Ryan very early in the process, and he's a great guy. And I've definitely heard after that episode aired, people were saying that they loved our conversation, and that's really what made them want to pick up the book.
Well, it made my top 10 books of last year. I remember sending you a thing on Instagram, and I read a lot, so that's saying something.
Oh, well, thank you.
But no, I really enjoyed it, because I've got a few Scream books as well, and they're definitely not as good as your one.
Well, and I'll say I was actually surprised when I first started out that there wasn't a book like this already done, because Nightmare on Elm Street and Halloween and, Friday the 13th, they have, 10-hour documentaries, they have multiple books about them and everything. And with Scream being so iconic, I kind of figured that there was a book that was already out, that, maybe there was an official book instead of my unauthorized book, but there wasn't. And so that was kind of something I saw in the market that, especially with the anniversary coming up, because when I started, the fifth movie hadn't been announced as going into production. And it seemed like it was a hole there for horror fans that love these movies. They're so iconic, and yet there wasn't a book that let them know what happened and how they were made and how much everyone loved them when they were making them.
Yeah, I agree. I did. There definitely is a hole, and I do wonder if it's maybe because it's still. I mean, it's 25 years since the first movie, but I wonder if it's still like young in years, if that makes any real sense. Because you talk about Halloween and Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street, and like you said, they had these documentaries done that many hours of footage and stuff that they go over, and multiple discs that you have to load into a DVD player. And then they normally have a really good companion guide, like a really big hard book cover with lots of photos and behind the scenes stuff. And I agree with you. I've got the Friday the 13th, Camp Crystal Lake sort of, I guess, almanac or whatever that's called. I can't remember what it's called, to be totally honest, but maybe Camp Crystal Lake Memories or something like that. And then, I've got a Halloween one. I've got, some other movie ones, and like Back to the Future, there's a Ghostbusters one. And that's the thing, is like, is there not enough Scream fans that they couldn't, like, I'm surprised before yourself, that they've had a couple of books, but not really to the depth you've gone to. And it's almost like they need to go, you know what, let's get Jay back. Let's let him write more. And we'll get a few other people that, like, I think there's Ryan Hills that's in a lot of the groups. That's a very, he's very good with it. He knows all the masks and all that sort of stuff. And then just get the right people together and just actually do this really cool book that's, got lots of color photos and all that sort of stuff, and behind the scenes photos. That, yeah, I think it would be a winner if they, they did it. But like you said, it's whether they want to authorize that sort of stuff.
Well, and I think the thing now, like you were saying, when I started, like I said, Scream 5 wasn't in production yet. I actually went down to the set, and I was in the midst of everything. But now that they're in the midst of the new movies, I think everything's going to kind of get put on hold, because, like, even people have asked me, like, oh, are you going to update the book, to go into more depth about 5, 6, and that, like, I think the thing is, you can't really do a really in-depth book about something that just came out a year ago or a couple months ago. You kind of need a few years to kind of, look at it unbiased and objectively, because I mean, look what's happened with Scream 3 and 4. When they came out, the reactions have changed and softened, or gotten worse for different things, and people have liked other things more. So I think you really need that distance between when things come out. So I don't think that we'll see anything until this next wave kind of has a little bit of time.
Well, I guess we'll get into our first major discussion. So, guys, the big thing that's sort of, I guess, on the radar, and one of the big, I guess, controversies or conspiracy theories or whatever you want to call it, the great debate is whether Stu Macher survived, firstly, bleeding out, but then secondly, huge television falling on his head. Me personally, I think the weight of that TV crushes his skull anyway. But there's also the electrocution side of things. Did he survive, Jake? Tell me, did he survive? I mean, I know you wrote about this, and there was this idea for Scream 3 that he would be alive, but do you think someone survives that?
Well, so I think we do have to say, I don't think any of the Stu truthers would be around if it wasn't for the original idea for Scream 3 that had Matthew Lillard coming back as Stu. I think, and I think, again, that's something that over the years that has grown. But I mean, he says he's feeling woozy already before she drops a TV on him. And I mean, it's been a while since I've seen one of those TVs, but from what I remember, they were pretty heavy.
Yeah, 100%.
Like you said, I'm pretty sure it would have crushed someone, especially if they were in a weakened state.
Michelle, thoughts?
He's dead. Plain and simple. He's dead. But I am open to the idea that we didn't necessarily see him, like he hasn't been shot in the head, he wasn't stabbed in the heart. So is there the thing where the killer can always come back? So I'm open to it, but I think he's dead.
Yeah, I don't know. This is something I've talked about a lot, I feel like, recently, and I know that it's probably going to sound a little bit hypocritical, but my feeling about the Scream franchise and why I like it so much is that it does feel like, compared to like a Halloween or Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, all these other great franchises, that because the killers, it's always a new killer in each movie. I feel like, and a lot of the scenarios that we see in the movies, I think there's still a grounding in reality there. And yeah, while there definitely are some points where you go, oh, geez, I don't know if they would have survived that many stabs, especially in the latest movie. But I feel like there's still this reality about it that I feel like bringing Stu back is just borders on the supernatural and defies the logic of what we've seen in pretty much the 5 Scream movies. Yeah, okay, there's some, maybe the odd issue. I'm sure one of you two could bring one up that doesn't really, it's not quite logical or is a little bit over the top. But I think generally speaking, I think the movie, especially when Wes was involved, I think they were really, it was really important to them to not be too over the top, like I said, a Michael Myers gets shot 6 times, fall out a window, and then the body disappear kind of thing. So I feel like having Stu come back, I'm even surprised Wes entertained that idea. And I'm surprised Kevin would have even gone down that path, because I think for me, I could maybe live with Scream 3 doing it, but I feel like personally the logic of him firstly surviving and then him somewhat being in jail makes 0 sense, because it's never mentioned in any of the sequels since. And I think, you talk about even, into the second movie, like Mickey and Mrs. Loomis, like they talk about the trial and stuff like that. Well, if Stu did survive in the first movie, how is it not mentioned that there was a trial for him going to jail or there's so much about that just doesn't make sense. And then finally, I think your legacy characters, Dewey, Gail, and Sydney, they would know if Stu was still alive somewhere. I'm sure, I can't conceive any world that at least in this universe, that they would not, at least one of them would not know that Stu was alive somewhere. So for me, that's where I just think it makes no sense bringing him back.
Not to change sides, but
go. I want a fair and even debate. You go for it.
He's dead, but he could be alive.
Yeah. Not to change sides, but I think if they would have done it with the third movie, they could have got away, because I mean, like you said, the trial and everything, he takes a plea deal because the evidence is kind of everywhere. You have survivors and you have all the dead bodies. I'm sure there's fingerprints everywhere, even though it's his house. So he could have pled out and gone to jail. And because the second one really focuses much more on Billy because of Mrs. Loomis. So I could see it for the third movie, but like you said, we're now heading into the 6th movie, and there would have been some mention that he was alive. You know, he wouldn't have been, you know, living in a cave somewhere, you know, after faking his death. Like that, I think would be a little much. Woodsboro doesn't look like it has many caves to hide in.
Michelle?
Oh, I'd love to see him back. Just the character of Stu is one of my favorite. And Matthew Lillard is like 100% convinced that Stu survived. He's even said in an interview, throw a TV on my head, like we can make this happen. But I think unless he's escaped into like witness protection, or, you know, he escaped custody, like where has he been hiding this entire time?
Yeah. And I think that's the believability of it. It doesn't make sense. Again, if they had have dropped a tidbit in the 2nd movie or even early in the 3rd that he's in jail or something like that, I could have maybe lived with it. But I think there's been too much time gone past. At some point, if the killers, again, any of the movies where the killings start, surely there's a conversation where Dewey, Gale, or Sydney say, "Oh, is Stu still locked away? Can we please check on that?" kind of thing, or is he having some sort of? Could it be him? Like, if he was still alive, that has to have been mentioned at some point, but we've never seen that. So to me, that sort of says that he was dead, and I really believe they killed him. You know, in that first movie, not intending to have him back. And then the idea came as, oh, well, maybe we could twist. And it's a bit like the whole Randy thing. I think Jake touches on the book, that there was definitely an idea that, oh, could we bring Jamie Kennedy back for the 3rd? And then, oh, well, that's a little bit over the top. Let's just do a video so we can, you know, justify that way. But look, I just wonder if, as Jake calls them, the Stu Truthers, that I think it's just this love of his character, and I get it. I would love to see him back in some form, but not as an alive person. Like if they did some sort of flashback where they de-aged him a bit, like they did with Skeet, I can kind of see it, and I think it would be a bit fun. Even seeing it from, again, one of my favorite other sequels is Back to the Future 2, and one of the great things about Back to the Future 2 is they're able to go back into the first movie and you can see it from a different angle. I could kind of see, and that's where I thought Scream 5 was potentially going when I knew they were filming at the house, or at least the set of the house. And I'd heard the rumor that Skeet was there, or at least, as we spoke about in the last episode, that Marley Shelton accidentally tagged Skeet in an Instagram post. I actually thought that's what was going to happen. I thought they were bringing the core cast back, even Jamie Kennedy, Matt, and Skeet, and they were going to recreate the massacre from the first one and maybe see it from a different perspective. But can they bring him back as a different character?
And I think that ship sailed when they had Vince in this last movie as his nephew.
Yeah. They
would have had to have brought him back this time. But did you guys ever see The Following that Kevin wrote, the TV show?
No, but I know it was based on the same sort of idea he had for Scream 3, right?
Yeah, it was, about a guy who basically is leading a cult from jail, and he gets out he escapes in the first episode. And the first episode of that is so well done and so creepy that if that's what they were going to do, like a version of, I would have loved to see that as a Scream. I think there was a lot of potential. I mean, obviously the show went on for 2 or 3 years, I think, maybe a little bit longer, but he definitely used some of the elements that were in the original Scream 3 treatment. And if you haven't seen it, even if you watch just the pilot, like, I would highly recommend checking that out. And Nico from Scream 4 is in it also.
Yeah, it's definitely worth checking out. And now that, I know you touch about it on your book as well, and I think on Australian television here, I remember it coming out and then pumping it up as a Kevin Williamson, sort of Dawson's Creek, Kevin Williamson and Kevin Bacon being sort of very front and center. But I never saw it, and it's not till recently your book, and then I think someone else had mentioned that it was sort of inspired from, I guess, the unused idea of Scream 3. So yeah, it's definitely probably, I'll definitely go check it out now for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, like I said, even if you don't watch the whole series, the pilot alone it's something. I don't rewatch too many, especially dramas. I don't rewatch much, but that's one that I've gone back to a couple of times because it's just a really tight 1 hour episode that you really are kind of on your edge of your seat during, and there's some really good twists in it.
So I guess, moving forward to Scream 6, what are some thoughts you're thinking about the next movie, where they're going to go?
Michelle, do you want to go first? I feel like I've been hogging a lot.
God, I don't even know if I've given it thought, to be honest. I'm still recovering from Scream 5.
I'll say, so there's two things. One, one thing that I'm just trying to put out into the world is I think we need a Gale Weathers like Paramount Plus Netflix show where she's like investigating a string of murders or something each season, like a Murder She Wrote type of, but like with Gale and her tongue. And I think that would be amazing. And Courtney could still do her new TV show, and that, I think that's what we need though. Because I felt, I'm probably gonna get raked over the coals the more I say this, but like I felt like Scream 5, it wasn't the most organic way that Sydney and Gale were integrated. I thought Dewey was integrated really well. And I thought that it was also a natural ending point that they could have pivoted away from them. So I'm kind of torn about hearing that they're coming back for the sixth one. Also with Sydney having kids now, with them establishing that, like, are you really gonna kill her off at some point when she has young children? Like, so that's just kind of also, but something that I think would also be cool and change things up is if they were to go the route of having two killers again, if they unmasked one like halfway through, so that so then the characters think they're in the clear, and then you have what they refer to in Scream 4 as the third act main cast bloodbath.
Look, there's so many ways there they definitely can go, but I'm with you. I love Gale so much. I love Sydney so much, but I feel like I had this debate with on Chatflix recently, and I kind of made the comment saying their arcs are sort of finished, and I had a sort of people, one of the guys sort of disagree, and I was kind of like, okay, I guess it wasn't, the loop wasn't completely closed, and you could maybe still take them forward, those characters, but I feel like while Scream is very synonymous with, or Sydney and Gale are very synonymous with the Scream franchise, I think at some point you have to let go. And I think it would be, and you touched on it, that I think it would be even more ridiculous to somehow rope Sydney into it. And then, like you said, whether Mark Kincaid actually physically came back or just having, kids involved and all that sort of stuff. I'm like, I don't see it. And I don't think Nev would want to come back if it wasn't an amazing idea or reason for her to be there. Gale, I can sort of see a little bit, but again, the same thing. It's like, I feel like didn't we see them pass the torch and kind of have their almost farewell at the end of 5? I think, I'm not too sure what they're going to do with Gale, to be totally honest. Again, the selfish part of me is like, yeah, great, Courtney Cox is back, but then there's a part of me goes, wow, but is it just for the sake of it? Is it just fan service too much?
And that's actually also my concern with everyone saying that they want Kirby back. So I'm gonna preface this that I really did enjoy Scream, the fifth movie, but I did, because, you know, at this point I feel like I'm probably a little too close to it. I felt like Sheriff Judy wasn't the same character necessarily that we saw in Scream 4. You know, especially drinking the glass of wine and then going to drive and pick up the sushi. Like, Deputy Judy would never have a drink and then drive. Like, she wears a vest when she doesn't really need it, you know, so like she's gonna like hardcore, you know. And that's my fear with Kirby, is she's one of my favorites in the series, and if they don't get the character right, I would prefer not to have Kirby back. You know, like, just like have her have they should have just had her die if they aren't sure that they're going to be able to bring her back in the same way again, in an organic way, but also as that character, you know. And that's my one fear with bringing Kirby back, because she's another one that everyone is, you know, wanting to see come back.
Do you bring her back and make her the opening kill? I've seen that a few places. Or is that too obvious?
I mean, it's very cut and weary of them.
That's true.
Yeah. I have seen a lot of people online come up with the idea like, oh, it'd be awesome. And I think someone did write, I didn't read it all because it was quite long-winded, but I do want to read it. But someone had almost, I guess, scripted a opening kill of Kirby. And it's like, yeah, that's all great. But now that everyone's talking about it, wouldn't that be like such a non-shock? Like, there'd be no tension to it. As soon as people see Kirby in that first scene, everyone's like, well, she's totally dying. Unless they, I guess, flip the script a little bit and have her survive like Tara. But overall, I think if people start talking about it and putting that in the universe and it happens, that's not surprising. That's not interesting. It's like, oh, that's just a really good fan story that got made into a movie. Like,
but also we've got Mindy now, so do you need two sort of randy characters? Like, Mindy's kind of the new Kirby, so she's sort of unnecessary.
Yeah.
You know what would be fun also? I forget who I was having this conversation with, but if they did like almost like a Survivor Royal Rumble, in the next movie, bring back everyone who survived, like Joel that we've never seen, bring back Mark, and almost like someone is trying to kill the survivors of the Stab movies. And so it's all the survivors from the Scream movies have to like almost band together. I think that would be kind of an interesting idea and a fun way to get everyone back. Things that I think about when I probably should be doing other things about possible ways that Scream could go on.
Okay, so I guess there's a lot of rumors swirling out there. We know the new film is going to be filmed in Canada. But I've already heard rumors, and whether I take a lot of it with a grain of Debbie's salt, but apparently there's talks that maybe it's going to be set in two different places. Does that have you either heard that or?
Oh, no. No, this is news to me.
Oh, okay.
Are you breaking exclusive news?
Yeah.
No, I literally know nothing. I have no links to Paramount or Radio Silence or any of the major players. I don't even know where it came from, but I think there was, you know, some sort of mention of, it would be sort of two different locations in play.
Could it not be Woodsboro and then maybe College, like we talked about sort of last time?
Yeah, well, the way I read it was, maybe say like a Gale and Sydney, major, big city, and then the other, key players being in Woodsboro or somewhere else, quite little town,
surely
or
at this
college
point,
or something.
You just leave Woodsboro at this point. Surely
100%.
Everyone just get out.
Yeah, like I know Sydney said she wasn't going to come back, but like at this point, it doesn't matter who dies, like just don't. Like it's not worth it at this point for her. Like send flowers, send your regards, be very exactly. FaceTime me for the funeral. Like she's got kids. She can't go to Woodsboro.
Yeah.
And I think she's only gonna get involved, I reckon, if something was to happen like to her kids or to Mark, like why would she come back to help these random kids again?
Yeah, I mean, this time she only got involved because Dewey was killed. That's what brought her back. So unless they're gonna kill Gail,
No,
which
you can't.
that would I think I would be more upset if Gail got it than Sydney. Like I honestly think that would be really hard for me.
Is it true that Courtney had actually expressed some sort of desire of being killed in Scream 4? As far as you know, Jake?
I never heard that.
So it's
no
not
one
in the
ever.
book. It's definitely not in
It's
the book.
not in the book. Unless you hand wrote it into your copy. I haven't heard that.
Yeah, okay.
Then again, though, Kristen Stewart just came out and said that she was offered the opening to Scream 4, and I hadn't heard that when I spoke to the casting director.
Yeah.
So Courtney might have, said it maybe as a joke. I can't see how. I know, and I don't know where I heard this, but I feel like I heard that there was talk at one point that they were going to give Gail and Dewey kids in Scream 4.
Yep.
Yeah, you've heard that too?
Yeah, I'd heard that in an early script, or at least when they were conceiving the idea for Scream 4, that they would have a young child, if not baby, potentially. And then it sort of got to the point where you similar to what you're saying about Sydney, like you got a kid, how can you kill one of these guys off that's got a kid, kind of thing. But also I think they probably just thought anything with doing a movie is already hard enough, but doing it with kids and animals is always a little bit trickier. So I think it pretty much came down to that. It was like, do we need to have a kid in this movie? It's just more more effort. And I don't know how Wes, to be honest, off the top of my head, I don't think Wes has probably had a lot of movies with kids in it. So I know obviously A New Nightmare, there's probably one or two others, but
People Under the Stairs.
Yeah. Look, he's had kids in movies before, don't get me wrong, but I think when you're talking about maybe a really young child, like a toddler type thing, it was probably like, too hard basket. We don't need that. It's not important. Which is ironic because the toddler, they could have had a toddler and it could have been Wes Hicks back then, but
Yeah, well, that's what I saw. That could Wes Hicks be the son of Dewey and Judy?
I saw that interview with David Arquette, talking about it. And I mean, if we're going to go with the timeline that's supposedly established, Wes would have been born already. And that means that Dewey cheated on Gail. And I don't want that even in the universe. Like, Dewey was such a good guy. And did you guys hear also Courtney actually tried arguing with Radio Silence to keep Dewey alive in this one? So I just don't think that there's a lot of theories and people are grasping at things, but when I saw that Wes was Dewey's kid thing, I was like, Wes was just at his dad's that week because Judy had already split with them. That's what that one is easily explained, and it has nothing to do with Dewey trying to eat Judy's lemon square.
I know. I that was an article I know popped up, and I'm sort of a bit over. There's definitely a lot of Scream related, I guess, clickbait material that I will click and look and read. And then you talked about the Kristen Stewart one as well. I mean, that was just a waste of an article. Really, it wasn't that exciting. It wasn't that interesting. And then she's put out, I'd come in for a Scream 6. And I don't know, and no disrespect to her, but that might also be just looking for more work and just, again, being more relevant at the time. The Wes thing, I agree with you. I think Dewey potentially cheating on Gail is just such a bullshit thing that just would go so against his character that makes, I wouldn't say it doesn't make sense. I guess it could happen because Judy was we know Judy was into Dewey, but I would put that also down to, yes, she's a single mom. and she's looking for this guy that she thinks, well, she's got him up on a pedestal and thinks he's, you know, father type material and would be a great husband and all that sort of stuff. I guess the fact that Wes is never referenced in the fourth one is probably the slight pothole, because when everything's going on, when someone's got a kid, you kind of, a bit like Sydney, you kind of think, well, I'm going to err on the side of caution and maybe not be in the vicinity. But like you said, Jake, I think you can believe it away that he's at his dad's house. He would have been, what, 7 or 8 years old in the fourth movie. I mean, it's believable that he's at his father's for that week or whatever, or at his grandparents.
It wasn't even a week. Like, if you think about it, it's really like 3 days or something.
Yeah.
You know, and he would have been, I mean, it came out in 2011, so it was 10-ish years ago. So he would have, been like 6 or 7, you know. So yeah, I mean, I think, you know, obviously when they made Scream 4, they weren't thinking of Wes Hicks being a person. But I think that's something that's much easier to explain away than Stu living in a cave for 26 years, or
100%,
you know, or Dewey cheating on Gail. Like, there's certain things that, you know, at the end of the day, we are talking about a movie, a horror movie, and like certain things you do, just like you said, you know, the way that certain people were stabbed, like like they even make fun of it in this movie with Tara being a human pincushion.
Yeah.
You know, so there are just some things that you do have to roll with, and then there's just, I think, others that are deal breakers. Apparently Stu being alive isn't a deal breaker for everyone, though.
No, not at all. It's going to be interesting to see if they ever bring him back, and the fact that Matthew Lillard has expressed a massive desire and has pushed the whole "I'm still alive," you know, storyline or narrative, definitely just makes it grow legs even more. I mean, the fact that he's on board, and like you said in your book, and I think it was in the Still Screaming documentary, where he was signed on for Scream 3 and was paid, at least initially, to be in that movie until things sort of changed. So I guess that's where it absolutely grows legs. I guess my other counterpoint to why I believe he's dead, or at least from Radio Silence point of view he's dead, is the photos that we never actually saw in the movie was the crime scene photos. To me, that crime scene photo says, well, this is a body. This is someone that is dead. What's your take on that, Jake?
Yeah, I mean, if he's laying there long enough for them to take a photo with the TV on him, like,
no one's helping him.
Yeah, like obviously they've checked him, you know, as Joel said in Scream 2, like, the dude's not in the union anymore. Like, he's checked out. You know, they're not worried about trying to get the TV off of him. But at the same time, like you said, it's not in the movie, so it's not canon. So there's a loophole.
Yeah, absolutely. I just look at it as, yeah, you're right. And maybe they kept it out because they maybe want to give themselves options there too. But I think the fact that they had it in, or at least made it or set it up and took the photos and all that sort of stuff, that makes you think, well, they've written a version that he's definitely dead. Look, I've got to ask, actually, Jake, what was your take on it? Now that we haven't really spoken Scream 5 to yourself, you've touched on it a little bit, but what was your take on actually having Skeet or Billy Loomis in this movie?
So that's actually one of the issues that the first time Billy shows up, I thought was great. You know, a great surprise, because they actually, I know a few people had, you know, but for the most part, I think, other than like the really hardcore fans, like, they really kept that secret. I don't know that we needed to have him keep showing up and to help Sam find the knife. And so it felt a little bit like fan service, and I felt sometimes that's the one criticism that I have about the movies. I felt like because those guys are such fans, and they love the movies as much as we do, that they were putting in all these Easter eggs for the fans. And for me, I thought it got to be a little too much at times. And I think having Skeet in it as much as he was, especially because they never really go back to Sam taking the pills and everything, like they never really explore that further. It's just like that in that one scene, is she crazy? Maybe she's the killer. And then it's never explored or mentioned again.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, yeah, I don't know how I feel about it 100%. It was kind of, like you said, the fan servicey part was like cool to kind of see him. And like you said, the first reveal in the hospital sort of bathroom mirror was really cool. But then you sort of wonder, did we need to keep seeing it? And especially, I know, speaking to my offside Angus on the actual Scream 5 podcast, one of the issues he had with it was that it's her hallucination of what she thinks her father was or what she knows of her father. Yet how does he direct her to find a knife? That's already in her subconscious. She should know that. Like, it was a bit weird. Like, he felt like that was a bit more of a stretch where, yeah, it's okay for him there or be the voice in her head, but he shouldn't be able to give her information that she's not privy to, if that makes sense. Like, it's a weird kind of, again, I'm not a doctor, so I won't go too far down the mental health sort of, those sort of issues rabbit hole. But I sort of hadn't thought about it like that. I'm like, oh, that's probably right, that hallucinations should not be giving you new information. It should be there already, but it is what it is.
I think that's what we need Ryan C. Showers to do an episode on, get like a clinical professional to talk about the trauma with Sydney and Sam's hallucinations and just have like a clinical discussion.
Because I saw something online that said Billy had all his stab wounds, but why was he not shot in the head like in her hallucinations? Like, why did they leave that bit out?
He's got to look beautiful, doesn't he?
I don't know, but I found him so distracting. Like, I'm a #1 Billy fan. Like, I love Skeet and I love the character of Billy, but I just found the de-aging and the way he looked like extra creepy, and it was just so distracting to me.
But also, have you seen him on Instagram? Like, he's aging really well.
Yeah, I don't know how much de-aging they even did.
Yeah, like, and I've met him a couple times. Like, I think a lot of it they probably could have just done with makeup. He would have, maybe looked a little bit older than 18, but like, he probably would have been in the ballpark with just makeup.
Yeah, I agree. I've seen him in a few things recently. He was on a podcast, Talk Scary to Me, with horror girl Scout and Danielle Harris. And even on that, I was like, yeah, you're right. He doesn't, you take off the facial hair and that, but he still looks relatively really good for his age.
Yeah,
and
for 50.
And yeah, I was like, did they need to? Because I feel like the weird thing about the de-aging is, like, by de-aging him, it almost made him look a little bit more plastic or a little bit more fake. Like, he'd had Botox and all these other bits and pieces and fillers, because it just didn't look. It looked a little bit off. I know some people raved that it looked good, but for me, it just took me a little bit out of the film because it didn't look enough like him. And I've heard a lot of debates about whether, well, couldn't they have just kept him at his age, though, like the age he might really be at, and that's her version that she can see of him. I don't know. I mean,
well, going back to what Michelle said, I know I've read online also that people are like, why is she seeing him as when he was murdering and killed and everything? Like, why isn't he, like other photos that she would have seen? Why is she seeing him stabbed and everything? So yeah. I think, again, I think it's just one of those things that, maybe she watched that documentary about Stab and everything. They could have also gotten away with having Luke Wilson as Billy, from her watching the Stab movies.
Yeah.
That's her version of her father is Luke Wilson.
That'd be kind of funny. You're right. I mean, look, we're probably splitting hairs anyway, but I know that was, again, in a couple of days after I'd seen it. So luckily we got it here in Australia a couple of days earlier than the US, and I had to bite my lip because obviously there was a lot of people in groups that are, like yourself, Jake, from the United States of America, and I had to bite my lip. I couldn't talk about it, but I know one of the early things that people started talking about was like, why is she seeing him like this? Yeah, I guess for me, I can explain it. Like, yeah, she never met her father. I guess in a lot of ways, if he wasn't infamous, she would never really necessarily know what he looks like unless she got an old yearbook or something like that. But these are very well advertised, murders. There's plenty of photos of him. The crime scene photos, I'm sure she potentially had seen. And then obviously you've got movies and books on the subject. So I definitely think it's very plausible that her version or hallucination is very much, she can see imagine what he looks like. Though it would have been kind of cool that he wasn't always in the blood-stained shirt. Like she could see him like he was in the photo that they actually used that as actually a publicity shot for the movie, which makes zero sense. I think Michelle touched on that in the last episode. I'm not super hung up on that. It's probably one of those things that, yeah, again, technically is not accurate or probably should not be a thing, but I can live with that. It doesn't bother me too much. I think I'm happy with the way it's explained. I think it's believable that she would know what her father looks like, and I don't have any issues. I know some people did, but for me, it's one of those things I can let go.
Can I ask Jake about one of my deal breakers, this hill that I will die on? How do you feel about the basement scenes, seeing as we know there's no basement at Stu's house?
Okay, so again, because I was like living and breathing Scream and the Scream movies, that house hurt my soul, because even not just the basement, which it seemed really odd that they wouldn't just make it the garage, since the garage was such an important part of the first movie, but also the upstairs, like where they have the chase scene and she goes down the 3 stairs and Ghostface comes out the other side, like that was missing. Like,
Yep.
So like you could tell that they were recreating it and they were trying to get it just right, but like there were things that did, like, it hurt my soul a little bit.
Look, this is not look, I think all three of us here right now, we love this franchise so much. So even what we would consider our last ranked Scream movie is still a great movie and still better than a lot of other movies we'll ever see. So I don't want us to sound like we are negative, but that's one thing I had an issue with, Jake. Full disclosure, I did feel like I was spoiled on the fact that they were going to Stu Marker's house in Kevin Williamson's Instagram post, and there was a couple other Instagram posts early on. So I'm like, oh, well, they're recreating scenes either from the movie or they're going to end up there for some reason. The reasoning and the storyline or plot device for them to be in the house for Scream 5, I didn't love. I thought it was way over the top contrived. I think it made actually zero sense, but I just went with it. I just roll with the punches. But I was with you. I thought there was definitely some aspects of the set that at points I felt like, yeah, they could be actually on location and I would believe it. And then you're right, there was other parts that I felt, it felt claustrophobic and it felt like a set. Like I said, when you went up the stairs, I felt like rooms that should have been rooms were just little cupboards or little en-suites, I felt like the geography was a bit off. And then I only found out in the last couple of days, me and Michelle had talked about the basement and other issues. But as far as I know, I don't even think they had someone scout it and take a lot of photos to replicate the house. But they never had, as far as I know, someone that actually measured it out correctly, because I feel like that's where it's a little bit off. Maybe the actual proportions of the house are not exact. So it does feel a little bit off. So for me, I don't like to be negative like that because I think overall the movie is a lot of fun. But I felt like, did we even need to go to the house in the end?
Well, and to go along with what you're saying, yeah, I mean, the worst Scream movie is still miles ahead of even some of the best of other franchises. Like there is not a bad Scream movie in my opinion, and I think these little nitpicky things that we're saying are coming from a place of we as fans feel an ownership to these movies, and it's coming from a place of we love and cherish these movies, so when there's something that isn't matching up, and I think you're right, the like foyer area did seem a little bit smaller than it was in the original movie. Like it seemed a little crowded when they were all kind of in there, and in the first movie, like it seemed like it was basically like the size of a room, not just a foyer.
Yeah, I like. I mean, they nailed the kitchen. I think for me, they nailed a few other bits and pieces, but it did. I don't know. I just felt like it was almost like they got, they had to do it. They couldn't do a full scale, so they sort of did it in a slightly, smaller scale, and that's why it felt more claustrophobic. Like when they panned out and you had Sam Carpenter realize where she was. I really thought that was really well done, and there was definitely some other parts. Again, like I could believe that they were actually on location, but then there was definitely some other shots and angles that they used. I kind of felt like it was like in a different house. It wasn't the house, and that's, I guess, what sort of disappointed me a little bit, because like I said, these guys are super fans like us as well, so they love Wes Craven, they love Scream, so they're trying to do it justice. But I sort of thought, like, I don't know whether it was a money thing as well. It's just one of those nitpicks.
Well, I think we also have to remember when they filmed it, it was the end of 2020, the height of COVID, so they filmed basically the entire third act on a sound stage. And I think budget was probably, I mean, I don't know, but I would guess that there were budget reasons. I mean, one thing that I think made it the most obvious that it was on a sound stage is at the end when they tried to replicate the final shot where it goes over to the horizon, and you can tell like that's a backdrop, whereas in the first one when Gail is doing her report, the camera pans over and you see like just the hills and the sun coming up, and it's a gorgeous shot, but you could tell it was a backdrop this time. Like it was obvious, and I think it's little things like that I don't want to say the hardcore fans, but I think the fans that have watched it over and over picked up on, like you were saying, the scale and everything. One thing though, that, not to change the topic, but also I think we need to talk about who Sam and Tara's mom is and how it has to be the cheerleader. Like,
okay. Because I think this is kind of where Michelle's been going as well, because me and Michelle sort of did touch on this in the last episode a little bit, and that is going to be the real interesting thing, because I think they've definitely set that up to be a good hook for a sequel, like who the mum really is, what's her, like, obviously, she's had the fling with Billy, or she was in love with Billy, but even how she, she was in love with someone, she's had a baby with someone or been pregnant to, a killer. And then how does that affect her moving forward? Her whole lie, not telling Sam for so long, and it's in diaries, the falling out with the husband. There's a lot to deal with there. And I think it's a great hook for a new character for the next movie. But you're right. Is it the cheerleader? So are you saying it's the blonde cheerleader, or?
I mean, I know that, Jenna Ortega and Melissa Barrera are Hispanic, so realistically, it would have to be the mother that was if Billy is the father, but I feel like it has to be the cheerleader, like, just because that would explain why she was so the way she was towards Sydney in the bathroom. And yeah, I just feel like it needs to be her, just from a fan. If we're gonna do fan service, let's do it with the cheerleader. Like, this will be the hill that I want to die on. I want, you know.
Yeah, I mean, like last time I actually looked at the movie, I actually thought to myself, yeah, okay, she's blonde, but she still has a kind of a look to her that
she's not a natural blonde.
no, exactly. So I feel like she's not super white either. So I think that could probably work. But I also agree that she probably needs to, you know, have that, like an Eva Longoria, you know, sort of look to her that looks a little bit more, you know, like I said, Hispanic, that makes it, you know, Sam is the offspring of Billy and Chris. Is it Christine? Christina.
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 Yeah, Christina is Cotton's girlfriend.
So
and also that's another great story in the book, is how Skeet got cast because he was dating her.
Yeah.
And he drove her to the audition.
Yeah, and I reckon that's like a really cool, like, in joke that would make that kind of work, that they were actually together in real life. That, you know, and you're right. A lot of that conversation in the bathroom actually makes a lot of sense if she is the one. Like, you know,
she's jealous because she knows she's pregnant with Billy's kid, and that's why she hit. I'm like probably like this close to writing like fan fiction. Like,
Do it.
I'm gonna write the Netflix
A new book.
show. Yeah, I'll write a whole line of Gail Weathers investigates books, and then I'll start doing offshoots of the different characters. There'll be a whole series about the cheerleader and her friend.
I'm gonna hold you to that. You've got to do it.
As long as I don't get sued by anyone, I'm on it.
We won't tell anyone.
Okay.
No one will know. So I'm curious where both of you put Scream 5 in your ranking of the Scream movies.
I actually moved it a little bit, and it sort of varied. I mean, 1 and 2 are my favorites by far. 5 for me, after I'd seen it even the third time, I'd sort of had it sitting in third position with 4 and then 3. But I probably, you know, 4 and 5 are just slightly, I don't know, they're sort of interchangeable. I feel like that's only problem. Like with 4, I don't have as many issues with bits and pieces, whereas as we've discussed today, that I think there's still parts of Scream 5 that I really love, and then yet there's parts where, like I said, the house feeling a little bit off. The fact that they even go there, or the plot device of them going, oh, it's on the way, and Amber's parents owning the house. I just felt like a lot of that to me felt really contrived and convoluted and not realistic. So that's probably why I mark it down a little bit. But I love Richie in it. I love the Carpenter sisters. I love seeing Dewey. I loved so much about it. I just thought the ending and getting them there just seemed well and truly over the top. But it is what it is.
Also, can we talk about what teenager has that sway with their parents to be like, you're going to buy this house in this town and we're going to move there? Like,
and then you're going to leave and we're going to throw a party for our dead friend.
Yeah, like that's the one issue I had, is even if it's a party that's in celebration of them, and I know they did it to have it for, you know, the dual meaning of, you know, for Wes Craven, but like, who goes in is like, yeah, let's have a party.
Where are the parents in all of these movies? You never see anyone's parents.
Yeah. But to answer your question, I've softened a little bit too. I usually go 1. So I have 2 rankings. One in terms of like the best made movies, and then the ones that I watch the most. So I usually go 1, 4. I'm probably going to say 1, 4, 5 now. in terms of rewatchability, because 4 has its issues, don't get me wrong, but I find it just so much fun. The second one is a little slow to get started as it reintroduces everyone, so I'll kind of skip over some parts when I watch that, but I think, yeah, 1, 4, 5, 2, 3.
Michelle, come on, spill.
1, 2, 3, 5, then 4.
Okay, so you're a fan of 3.
Only one, apparently.
And don't get me wrong. I know, and it's probably front of mind too, because we talked about Ryan as well. But Ryan Seychelles, he'll die on the hill saying the third one's his favorite. And look, I hear what he's saying, but for me, there's still a lot to like about that movie. I think there's some great ideas in the movie. I just think the execution and some parts of the movie unfortunately lack the Kevin Williamson polish, and the fact that script was constantly being sort of, I guess, rewritten or written on the run, and that they didn't actually, and courtesy of your book as well, Jake, like I knew Aaron Kruger was not necessarily on the movie for a long time, but the fact that he was thrown in a room for 2 weeks and they pretty much only had that, and then they were kind of rewriting on the run, was a big reason why the third movie, and also Nev not being fully available for the movie, I think makes it, a movie that does have its issues. And at the end of the day, while the voice changer looks amazing, that was the one plot point. I hated the fact that the replication of all the voices. I think, to me, that was way too much of a cop-out or a lazy way of trying to get characters to do certain things or move certain places. And I was like, that's, again, one of those things that, like Stu coming back from the dead, I have a real issue with it. I think that's way too over the top. And it's, again, technology we can't even really get still now, really.
But at the same time, you also have to, like, if you watch these Scream movies, you think that it's like everyone is just cloning cell phones everywhere.
Yes.
Every movie they mention this. I don't know anyone in real life, and I also watch SVU like religiously. It's like Scream and SVU.
Yeah.
SVU doesn't clone phones. Like, this is something that like everyone in Woodsboro got like a class in high school about how to clone phones. And I don't think it's quite as prevalent as the Scream movies have led us to believe. I think we've been lied to.
Yeah. And look, and that's something I've heard recently. Like, I guess it was one of those plot devices you just took for granted that, oh, well, that's a thing. And I agree with you. I think that's definitely something that's exaggerated or a bit over the top. But I think the voice changer thing for me just doesn't really ring true. That I think you can't be fooled by, it may be a couple of lines of a particular person, but not a conversation with someone and having them sound so perfectly that person. I just don't buy it. And I think,
and why did we never see it? We haven't seen it again. Like, it's gone back to the original voice changer in 4 and 5.
Roman created it himself.
Yeah, he must have.
Well, on that note, thanks for chatting, Jake. And again, your book, It All Began with a Scream. Make sure you get it, people.
Thank you. Thank you both for this lovely discussion.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. It was great to have you on and great to talk more stuff Scream related and delve into the Stu Macker alive, dead. What is he? Is he going to be a ghost? Who knows?
Dead. He's dead.
Yeah, I mean, I think it needs to just very clearly come out that he is dead.
Yeah.
And Matthew knows that people love this. He knows about the Stu truthers, so he feeds into it by saying like he thinks he should come back. He knows how to play with people. Thanks, guys.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
By definition alone, there are fewer films. Sequels suck. Sequels suck. Sequels suck.